Oh, YouTube friends, T-minus 3 weeks. That's right, 3 weeks from today I move in. And it's been a heck of a week, I'll be honest. On a personal note, I was going out of town the other day, and I'm on the plane and my wife texts me, call me immediately. Well, I can't call him on the plane, but I had Wi-Fi. I was going to shoot a video out of town. And so I start texting with my wife. My mother-in-law had a giant heart attack and ended up passing away later that day. That was earlier this week. And I landed immediately, get on the next plane back to Austin, so I didn't go shoot the video. And while I'm in between planes, I talked to Matthew, who's on the job site and helping me. And Matthew goes, well, I'm so sorry, but I have some additional bad news for you. And that's this right here. We had a pretty good sized leak when we turned the water on. And Matthew was concerned about it. He'd seen this happen before. So we had people stationed everywhere in the house, you know, making sure angle stops worked and toilets didn't overflow and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, someone yells, turn off the water! And there's water coming down through these recess cans here in the foyer. So I'm like, well, gosh, what could it possibly be? And with a little bit of kind of sleuthing, we realized, oh my gosh, our in-wall toilet, I've got one in my boys' bath right above there, is leaking, and we don't know what it is. So I immediately think, oh my gosh, what happened? Did my plumbers mess this up? We've done several of these before. I bet I've done a dozen before. I even had them at my old office, and I never had a problem with them. It's a little risky having a tank in the wall, right? But they seem to be really well made. They're from Germany. So then the plumbers go, hey, I think that the tile guys may have put a nail through it when they were putting the hardy backer down below, which holds the in-wall carriage, which holds the in-wall toilet, the wall-hung toilet. So, all right, let's get our guy, Nathan, to cut it out. So we cut out all that tile. We don't see a problem. We turn the water back on, and yes, it's leaking, and you can see it, but we're still not sure what's happening. So let's cut to my iPhone, and we'll show you what we found. All right, so we ripped all the tile off and filled up the tank, and there we go. We don't see anything leaking here in this space. But if you go to the back side of this, we have cabinetry on the back wall over here. And here's the green tape mark, which we pulled a tape to that approximate leak location. And if we open up the cabinet and go down, there is, it's gonna be a little hard to see, there's a nail hole right there, or a screw hole. It looks like the cabinet installer marked studs, but then didn't find a stud and backed it out. And we're about to take it out and see, but I have a feeling that's what the problem is. All right, we're back in here now. And if I shine my little flashlight in there, it's gonna be really hard to see. It's right in, where is it? Right there, in the bottom left of the screen. I'm shining my light on it right there. Oh. Yeah. It looks to be a screw hole that the screw was put in and backed out. I guess the fact that the screw backed out is actually good though, because if the screw is in and plugged the hole, it would have leaked 2 years from now and I would have been like, what the heck? Whereas now it leaked immediately. Now the question is, how do I replace that tank? Do I need to pull the whole carriage out, or can we replace this? We have no access to the backside. I got all that cabinetry in place. All right, so a screw gets in the tank and we've got a pretty good sized leak. Couple thoughts on this. Number one, where's my fault in that as the builder, and who's the subcontractor and where's their fault? And I'm really thankful that David's willing to be on camera with me. David, hey buddy. Guys, you've met David before.
It's been an interesting morning.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a week. David's with Benchmark. Benchmark Kitchens is actually the name, right?
Benchmark Kitchen and Bath.
Kitchen and Bath.
Benchmark Kitchens on Instagram.
Okay, there you go. And he supplied and installed all these beautiful crystal cabinets. We actually are going to make a video as we get closer to show you some of the really cool features.
We got a little green tape, a few tune-ups that are kind of part of the deal.
We're super close.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it was David and his guys that put a screw through the tank.
True.
And, at first I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these guys did it. And then I thought for 2 seconds and realized, wait a minute, there's always it always takes two to tango. Where's my part in that? And so, David, first off, I really appreciate you and your guys coming over today as we were talking about it and figuring out. Both you and the guy who actually put the screw in apologized and said, I'm really sorry. But then I immediately said to you, hey, you're probably only 10% of the fault here. This also falls on me as the builder.
I'll take 30.
Well, either way, I got 70 then, which is still the majority. It falls on me as the builder to give you correct information and to tell you when there's a problem. If I had a high power line going through this wall that you could die if you put a screw into.
Right, we want to put a flag up.
Right, whose fault is it if you put a screw into that, right? I should have flagged you. And in my case, on my phone, I have MultiVista, which is an app that goes back to the photos I took during construction. Actually, they did it. I spent like $1,100 to get the house fully documented. And if you look at that photo on my phone, you can pull it right up. My phone's in the room, so I don't have it right now. But if you pull that photo up, clearly you can see this big white tank recessed into the wall. And what I should have done is pulled you aside and said, hey, here's a photo of this wall. I've got water lines here and here to this vanity, which are, pretty small, ½ inch. It's pretty hard to hit those. But right here, I've got a giant bullseye with a plastic tank that's going to be filled with water.
Sure.
Let's try to avoid that.
If we had it to do over again, we wouldn't have known there's a millwork insulation covering this wall. We could have gotten red Sharpie and put a huge X,
For sure. And then the other thing I think is, I've put a bunch of these in before and never had a problem. When an electrician runs a wire or runs a pipe that's close to a stud where a cabinet guy like you could accidentally put a screw in, they put a nail plate on.
And that's a code thing.
That's a code thing. Why wouldn't I put a nail plate on this? Now, no nail plate's going to fit there easily because it's a darn big tank.
Right.
And like I said, it's plastic. But it does make me think, hey, if you're watching this from Gaboret or other manufacturers that make in-wall toilets, why don't you have a nail plate for that? A little 18 gauge piece of metal, which would cost 35 cents or $1.35 or whatever costs I'd pay for it. You supply it with a toilet, I screw that in behind there, and then I know that no one's going to put a screw in that tank.
Right.
That would have made a huge difference.
It was heartbreaking news at first, but I think, we're all talking through it and realizing we could have done a little better.
So I've been doing this 27 years, David.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had this particular thing happen, but I've had lots of leaks over the years. And I took some extreme measures in my house to make sure that leaks, if they occurred, weren't going to be a problem. This is one I didn't account for. And what my big takeaway here is, when you come in the future to my jobs, I'm going to simply take that photo that I showed you on my phone earlier, print that full size, and have it right on the wall here and go, here's this wall, here's this wall,
and
here's this wall.
high-risk areas.
Exactly, and then we talk about it. It would have been so easy to do. But instead, I had to rip all the tile out. I had to I had to buy a brand new carriage. I was bummed that they wouldn't just replace that tank, which probably cost $10. I had to spend $400 for a new carriage. That's kind of dumb on the manufacturer's part. But it also makes me think, well, maybe I shouldn't have put an in-wall carriage in and ended up doing a...
it's a great, nice detail.
It is.
But with its risks.
It's risky, and I'm paying the price on taking that
I think
risk.
At the end of the day, we all really dodged a bullet with, people being around, being on
that's
it.
Right. And it was no big deal. We stopped it after.
When your can lights leak, it's a little bit of a sign to
stop the water. Exactly.
When your ceiling's dripping.
Yeah. Anyways, the takeaway for me, though, for you guys watching this is, before your cabinet guy comes, take pictures of all those walls, even if it's just with your good camera or your phone camera. Print those out, have those available. And the other thing is, remember, look, accidents happen. I've told my homeowners for years, and this is what I told myself as the homeowner in this job and the contractor. This isn't rocket science. This isn't brain surgery. If I cut the wrong cord in your brain as I'm doing surgery, I can't go back and fix that. But we have a leak. We can absolutely fix it. This is no big deal. It sets us back $400 in a day's work. It's not the end of the world. We put a dehumidifier in, we put a fan in, we're fine. There's really no damage, even to my beautiful wood ceiling. In fact, the wood ceiling probably helps us. It probably would have been slightly more damage had it been just a sheetrock ceiling. In terms of just a little bit more drywall or paint. But in the end, no big deal. David, you're awesome, man. Stay tuned for a future video with David on the rest of the house, because man, these benchmark kitchen cabinets from Crystal, gorgeous.
It's looking gorgeous in here.
You keep working over here, I'm going to show these guys the rest of the house. Okay. So on the positive side for this week, lots of good things happened. My hot water heater is working. We got my Sandin up and running. If you haven't seen this before, this is a split unit. So outside is the condenser, which makes the hot water and sends it to the inside. And the plumbers put some thermostats in, one at the tank. So this is telling us tank temperature. So currently the tank's about 125 degrees. And that one up there is telling us the water temperature of the outgoing water, because this tank can get pretty hot. I'm sorry, I called it a Sandin. This is called an ECO2. Sandin's their old name. Sand CO2 technically is their current name. It can go up to 160 degrees. So this thing gets pretty darn hot. And so you've got a mixing valve right here, which is kind of like a shower mixing valve that's supplied with the unit. And now when the hot comes out, it's mixing with some cold and then sending it up. And you can see it's cooler now, but when it was running a minute ago, it was around 115. So we'll adjust this temperature to get it to where I want. But you obviously don't want, if this is set at the max setting 160, you don't want that water coming out. A couple of things we did in here that I'll review in some future videos, but I put a Uponor Belkin fin. It's a joint venture between Belkin and Uponor. It's basically a water sensing device that's a leak detector. Some cool stuff to talk about with that later. I put a water conditioning system in. This is by Nuvo H2O. It also has a whole house filter. The guys at Greater Austin Plumbing did a real nice job of getting all this in, especially because this was a last minute ad. And then I also hooked up my Metlin demand system. This little pump right here looks like a standard recirc pump, which just runs and runs and often is set on a timer. But in fact, it has this controller here with these low volt wires. And I'll show you how this works when we go upstairs. Or actually, I think we've got some stuff in the way. I'll have to do this on a future video. But basically, at each one of my hot water locations, I've got a button that I can press or a motion sensor which says, hey, I'm about to take a shower, circ the system. And then my Uponor plumbing, which has kind of a racetrack in the ceiling, circulates, brings it back down here again. So that racetrack is charged with hot water. And then the little twigs that go from there to like my daughter's bathroom upstairs or her shower, they just have maybe 7 or 8 piped feet, half-inch piped feet of cold to get rid of before it's hot. So now you've got basically instant hot water. Any fixture in my house should have water within 10 seconds or less that's hot. That's pretty cool. The low volt guys have been rocking too. Check this out. That piece of artwork on my wall is actually the Samsung Frame TV. And I got a full video on my low volt, my Ubiquity systems, some of this cool stuff, but my rack is being worked on right now. Those guys are at lunch. I've got a full Sonos install. We're doing a video about that, so stay tuned. We're in process over here. My electricians have been here this week, and last week I showed you how we were meeting code at the island and a few other places. Let me show you what that looks like. So underneath here where my overhang is, instead of putting one outlet on that side, we decided to put a slightly larger plug mold on, black, so it kind of dies into the face of this walnut here. And now I've got 3 plugs that are tied in that I can plug something in on my island anywhere. And then this is the outlet that we cut in on the side. I think it's pretty innocuous. I was worried about this line right here, or this line kind of looking funky but having an outlet in a way. The whites are not a perfect match to the crystal color that I did white, but not bad. So what I still have to do though is I got to cut this cabinet down. If you look in the back here, you'll see that outlet's coming out the back. And there it is right there. So it's sticking into the space a little bit. But what's cool is Crystal makes their cabinets with true hardwood drawers. So now all I've got to do is just cut a little section out of this. I don't know if this is maple or not. It looks like maybe maple hardwoods. But look at that, all sides are maple. It's going to be really easy for me to cut a little section out of that. And this drawer will still get full depth and full use. I'll just have one little section right here that I won't be able to use. As a little side note, my wife and I met with Amy, who's helping us organize the house. We hired a professional organizer, Amy Brady, and my wife and I and Amy went through the other day, and put basically where everything is going to go in the house. And now we're working with David on some organizers that we'll purchase that will actually fit into these drawers custom, and I can customize those for knives and spatulas and spoons and all those kinds of things. Gosh, the house has really come a long ways from last weekend. Between the setbacks we had earlier, the loss of my mother-in-law, and then the water, I had a pretty rough week. But going into the weekend now, I feel so much better that yes, I think we are actually going to make it. We got a ton to do on the outside. I've been working with my landscape designer about a landscape plan. I just ordered a giant load of pavers from Concrete Collaborative, so stay tuned on that. We'll be talking about those and how those are working. But I feel good. The last thing we got to do is change that toilet carriage out today, get that all put back together, and I should be ready for inspections within just a couple of days. So hopefully we'll go well. Guys, stay tuned for a lot of really cool videos that I've got coming out from this house. We're doing a lot of interesting and fun things over here. So I've got a halo video I still need to make, talking about all the lights and how they are set up on an app on my phone so that I can actually program scenes on these control pads right here. I'm going to do a final video on my Mitsubishi heating and cooling system. I've got the guys from Zender here commissioning my fresh air system that's in my attic. I got a full video about that. Just a lot of really cool stuff. And this last month or so of construction, every day has been just absolutely slammed all day long with questions and figuring things out. But I got to say, the house is turning out amazing. Guys, if you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.